On this week's episode, we're asking if we'll on this week's episode, we're asking if it will take The Rock to break the video game movie curse. We share our thoughts on the NBA playoffs. We talk to Hope's Fall, and did Guardians of the Galaxy suffer from sequelitis? All this and more as we reach our next stop, the PCC Multiverse. And we're back once again with the PCC Multiverse. This is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. We truly want to thank you for tuning in to our show each and every week. It wouldn't be a PCC Multiverse without the main man from Humanica Media. He is my good friend, and he's also the best fellow host, because I don't want to say co-host, because I don't know, that kind of puts it to the side there. A show could have. It is my main man. It's Josh Peterson. What's going on, my friend?
What up? Hey, I appreciate that equality, podcasting host quality. Well done.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you for that awkward silence I just had there. And I just want to make sure and let everyone out there know that he is going to have a great interview coming up later in the program with the drummer from the returning from a 10-year hiatus, if I'm not mistaken, the great band Hope's Fall. I think it was 10 years or thereabouts.
Last album was 2007. So yeah, 10 years.
All right. Well, they're back in action. They're back out performing. They're back out making records. And Josh got a chance to talk to the drummer of Hope's Fall, and that's coming up later in the program. We also have as well Rob McCallum standing by in the good old Cosmic Crossfire. He's going to talk about his thoughts about Apple, Netflix, Spotify, and a lot more there. Plus, Anthony Barberin, our man in the know when it comes to the NBA. He's going to break down the NBA playoffs real quickly. I know we're going to have such a packed episode. He's just going to give his winners of who's going to go into the Western and Eastern Conference, who's going to advance in the Eastern and Western conferences, and who's going to come out on top. And all that, we're going to make our picks on the NBA Finals and who will come out with the NBA title. We're going to come up with that. We're going to be back. He's going to be joining us a little bit later on as well. And Josh and I are going to be talking at the end of the show about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 and why it might suffer from sequelitis. But first, it's another great weekend at the box office. A Quiet Place is still going to be going strong in its second week. We talked about it in our previous show with our review at the Pop Culture Cosmos show. So if you get a chance, check out our thoughts on A Quiet Place. We think it's going to hold up pretty strong. It's going to do probably around $28 to $35 million this weekend at the domestic box office here in the U.S. But there is a movie out there which could or may not break that video game movie curse, and that is Rampage, that old classic arcade game which I was around for when it first came out. Yes, I am that old. But those creatures are coming to life in a manner of speaking on the big screen, along with The Rock. And we talked about last week John Cena and The Rock, as far as if John Cena can compare at some point in time to The Rock's value as a box office star. We're not sure if that's going to happen down the road, but this is going to be a big test for The Rock. And I say this, Josh, because the previews, I say this, Josh, because the reviews are not exactly the most stellar out there. It is under 50% on Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic. It is not garnering that great of support out there among social media and reviews. It still might capture the first spot on the domestic list. Plus, also, could still see some life out there in the international box office as well. Your thoughts on Rampage and if it will actually break the video game movie curse and help solidify The Rock as the box office movie champion.
This was kind of a weird one. When they first made this movie, I was not expecting it. Like Rampage is one of those games. They were fun when I was a kid, playing on Sega Genesis, but I did not really care that much for, like, it's not one of those things where I'm like, it'd be really cool if they made a movie out of it. And like I was telling you the other day, it was the game kind of revolved around the fact that you were getting points for, wrecking buildings and doing things like that. Whereas, you have in this one, you're not so much focusing on the carnage as much as you're focusing on the Rock teaming up with the his buddy, his ape buddy, to take down like a giant wolf and stuff like that. So just from what I've seen in the trailers, it looks like they really are on a stretch with the story, and it's not like something that seems, I know with something like that, it's not going to seem plausible like in any way, but it doesn't really seem like they try to sell it as being plausible. It's just they're writing a couple lines of dialogue like, oh, genetic engineering, we're going to throw this cube into a forest and these things are going to grow so big, it's going to be so cool. Like, that just doesn't really appeal to me. And then it's kind of like if they made a movie out of Burnout, you get points for creating destruction on and that's what makes the game fun. You want to hit as many cars as possible, get as many build up of points there. But if they added a narrative to it, it wouldn't be half the fun that it was or that it is. So I'm not too excited about this. And even like putting somebody like The Rock in that movie is not going to make it it's not going to make it good, I don't think. Like people will go see it. It'll make some money, but after The Rock, Jumanji was, they announced yesterday, was like Sony's highest grossing movie, overpassing Spider-Man. It's not going to be another Jumanji if that's what they're thinking is going to happen.
Well, even if it gets to half of Jumanji, that would be a big win for it and actually would put it as the highest grossing video game movie of all time. Whether it gets there, I seriously doubt it, because I don't even think The Rock is going to have enough Teflon to fend off against the reviews from both a standpoint of the critics and also word of mouth about how maybe undervalued this movie is, how disappointing this movie could be. Then again, like I said, we're probably not going to be able to catch it at the theaters. I will probably see it in video because it just at this point does not look like something that's going to be palatable for a lot of movie audiences out there. It might garner a strong first week based off of The Rock's name only. But then again, Baywatch did the same, and it almost got near a profit after the worldwide take what came in.
Look,
I don't see that same what?
Oh, sorry. I just want to ask you a quick question. Even if the movie does make money, I don't think that it's going to break the so-called video game to film adaptation curse, because just because a movie, I mean, what are your thoughts? Just because a movie makes a lot of money, does that necessarily mean that it's well liked by people, or do you think it's just people going in to sing it not really knowing what to expect out of it?
True, and has been video game movies that have turned a profit because of either it's the budget was low enough and they were able to succeed it. So yes, it doesn't definitively make a movie breaking that video game curse. Obviously, it should be a be all end all as far as not only is it a very good movie to watch, but also should be able to be a success at the box office. I don't think from all appearances, it looks like at least one end on a critical nature, it's not going to be even close to being that. And again, for a second nature, it might not end up being that as well. So we'll have to wait and see. I agree with you. I agree with you that this will not break the video game movie curse. I think we'll still be waiting. I think this just, again, it goes back to all those expectations I think they have in Hollywood and the film industry, and still not understanding what can make a good video game adaptation. I still don't think they have a grasp of it. Maybe if Uncharted or some other movie like God of War, which we will see coming up here in a few days, how good it is as far as from a cinematic point of view, because the reviews on that are really, really strong. or any other type of film, The Last of Us, you know, or any of the movies that are reported to be in production that are video game adaptations. I just don't think Hollywood yet has a grasp of exactly how to define and how to actually even produce a quality film from a video game adaptation as of yet. They try so hard to make sure all the ingredients of the video game are in there that they really forget what made that video game so good in the first place. And yes, just because you have George the gorilla in there, you have Lizzie the Godzilla, Lizzie the lizard, dinosaurish type deal, and the giant werewolf, and Ralph the giant werewolf thing, and Ralph the giant wolf. And that's, and did I say Lizzie? Oh yeah, Lizzie, the alligator, the huge gator type deal, and the giant and Ralph, the giant werewolf. Just because you have those elements in there, that's not going to be able to bring in audiences. And even though a lot of people have a lot of fond memories of Rampage, it's still not a game that I would have thought, like you said, was really a game a game worth adapting. People have talked about Asteroids being adapted to a movie format. I mean, really, it was just about shooting asteroids. But in this case, it's just about creatures, banging into and trying to destroy buildings. It really isn't that those concepts really just are. I don't know. It really comes down to the film industry not having a true grasp of the video game industry. And as of yet, we have not seen a video game adaptation come onto the big screen being something that for 100% for audiences can be truly translated into a full success from either a box office or a critical standpoint.
No, I agree. Everyone, I don't always necessarily agree with the way the critics bash the video game to film adaptations, because they go in wanting to bash them because that's what's going to get people to read their reviews, and I get that. But at the same time, I think that people who make these video game to film adaptations are under the impression that they can get away with a lot of things that they shouldn't be able to because it is a video game to film adaptation. But here's the thing, like people are smart, and there's that old acronym of KISS, keep it simple stupid, when it comes to filmmaking. People don't necessarily fall for that. I think there's a lot of assuming going on that people need something that just is going to help them escape, but like you forget we have, we're in this era of social media, so everything is going to everybody's going to look at everything very critically. So whether or not it's a complex or deep movie, people are going to want to see more than just buildings exploding and someone saying, oh, this magic box did this to these animals, we need to they'll totally be okay with that. So it's not that simple. But I'm curious to see what the reviews end up being. I'll watch it when it comes out. I won't necessarily go to the movie theaters to see it, but it's just not something that I'm really that interested in.
Neither am I, and after a first weekend, I don't think many people will either. What are your thoughts on Rampage? Do you think The Rock has enough box office clout to make it a success with audiences? Or do you think it's going to be like one of the buildings in a video game that it will eventually crash and burn? Share us your...
That was good. That was a good metaphor. I like that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I aim to please. Share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanica Media, and Game Source on Facebook and Twitter as well. Again, it's going to be a great episode, but I first want to make sure and let everyone know out there that our shows are being streamed 7 days a week on online radio stations, and that we deliver 2 brand new shows covering the latest in pop culture every Monday and Friday to Apple Podcasts or our over 30 different podcast networks. Just subscribe to any one of them on the Pop Culture Cosmos channel to get extra content, or just check out the Pop Culture Cosmos Facebook Facebook page for our entire radio schedule and a list of those podcast networks. So unbelievable. Let me read that last part again, just in case there was extra sound. Just subscribe to any one of them on the Pop Culture Cosmos channel to get extra content, or just check out the Pop Culture Cosmos Facebook page for our entire radio schedule and a list of those podcast networks. I know you've got a great thing going on with your experience known as Humanica Media. So share with us, Josh, what's the latest and greatest with Humanica Media?
Well, as you said earlier, we have an interview getting ready to be posted. You'll actually probably hear it first on the Pop Culture Cosmos of, I got to sit down and chat with Adam Morgan of Hope's Fall, a little post-hardcore band you may or may not heard of, but Loudwire did vote them as one of the most influential bands on the genre, so that was a good time, and that'll be up here soon. There's a new episode of the Super BS Games cast dropping, which also features another interview I did with Jonaman Nordhagen of Dim Bulb Games, and we're talking about Where the Water Tastes Like Wine. And then there's a brand new episode of, there's two brand new episodes of Inside Sports now available to download, which feature Charles Smith and his buddy who plays hockey talking about their predictions for the NHL playoffs. So you can check that out too. And also be sure to check us out on the Podcast Radio Network every Tuesday at 7 o'clock. Did I get it right this time?
Yes, you did. That is 7 o'clock Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific on the Podcast Radio Network, where you can find our shows as well, the Pop Culture Cosmos on Monday and the PCC Multiverse on Friday as well. Again, it's going to be a great podcast. Again, it's going to be a great show that we have for you. Coming up, we've got Rob McCallum in the middle, Rob McCallum in the Cosmic Crossfire, sharing his thoughts on Spotify, Apple, Netflix, his thoughts on all those big entities as far as what they're doing in the entertainment medium. Then we have Anthony Barberin coming up after that, sharing his thoughts on the NBA playoffs. Right after that, we've got Josh's interview, we've got a taste of Josh's interview with Adam Morgan of Hope's Fall, about 15, 20 minutes worth we'll throw in here for you. And then right after that, we've got our thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 as we continue to break down the Marvel Cinematic Universe leading up to Marvel's Infinity War. But first, we've got our good friend Chad. This is Hyperschmidt, and along with Might, they collaborated together for a great song. This is Collide, and this is the PCC Multiverse. Stay tuned, because right after the break, it's Josh interviewing. It's a taste of Josh's interview with Adam Morgan of Hope's Fall coming up right after the break. This is the PCC Multiverse. To check out the rest of Josh's interview with Adam Morgan of Hope's Fall, check out the latest episode of Topicocalypse today on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, and of course on the Humanica Media YouTube channel as well. Coming up next, it's Josh and I talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and did it suffer from sequelitis? We'll share our thoughts on that. It's the PCC Multiverse. And we're back to close out the show. This is the PCC Multiverse. I want to thank you so much for listening to our great show, and we truly appreciate you doing so. Want to thank first Adam Morgan from Hope's Fall for joining Josh, for taking the time to interview with Josh for not only this show, but obviously for his upcoming Topicocalypse as well. Rob McCallum, as always, for joining us in the Cosmic Crossfire, and Anthony Barberin breaking down the NBA playoffs as well. Don't forget. Oh, well, actually, I'll put it next week. I'll put that in a second. Before we head on out, Josh, we're talking the. Oh, before we head on out, Josh, we're continuing to break down the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Up next, we got Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, a movie which you and I didn't particularly care for reasons which I know we'll elaborate on. I will say this, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, I think, came in with a lot of hype, a lot of promise, and a lot of excitement but ultimately, after I left the theater, I think it was just suffering from a bad case of sequelitis because it just was, the jokes were not hitting on all cylinders. The story certainly was not hitting anywhere near the first one. And it just seemed to me like they were just, in many cases, just going through the motions and trying to continue doing the same thing that they were doing in the outstanding original, but just couldn't get the job done. Your thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 and what went wrong?
I think a lot went wrong with that movie. They they kind of like they're like, "Oh, hey, the first movie was successful because we had a lot of jokes and we were everyone thought it was funny. It was a sleeper hit and yeah, let's just take the formula for that movie and let's just amplify it for this next one." And they relied very heavily on the idea that people were not entranced, but like in love with the character of Baby Groot. And once he kind of wore out his welcome, they resorted more to like the Star-Lord and Rocket banter between the two of them. And then like, what's her name?
Gamora?
Gamora's sister kept showing, or just randomly showed up, and it had a lot of pieces. It seemed like more of a fan service film than anything else. Like I went into it expecting them to elaborate on this big universe, maybe talk a little more about Thanos, but it's really just it was a movie that could have been done, like, honestly, probably in like 30 minutes, with Star-Lord's dad making a whole movie out of that. I don't think that he was a great villain. I think, as far as like world building goes, there's a lot more they could have explored to make make Guardians of the Galaxy 2 feel like a more complete experience. But I wasn't impressed with it, and I felt like they were trying too hard to cater to the short attention spans of a lot of, your typical Marvel film goer. But uh yeah, man, I just, it was disappointing. I walked out of it like just tired and feeling that they were kind of beating a dead horse with their constant need to entertain. It had some moments. It was funny. It had a few cool things, but overall the experience was just kind of left a bad taste in my mouth.
It was a disappointment for me as well, coming off the high that was the original movie. Guardians of the Galaxy was so well done on all platforms. It was something that we hadn't seen, and something that pretty much a lot of individuals out there that went to go see it weren't expecting. And it proved that Marvel can make a hit out of virtually anything. Now, this movie was a colossal hit as far as at the box office. So money-wise, it did outstanding there. But from an aspect of, like you said, a world building, maybe you're going more into detail as far as what we wanted to see out of the Guardians of the Galaxy universe, you're right. It really didn't elaborate that much on what we were hoping to see. Instead of, like you said, it became a lot about, can we set up the jokes? Can we connect on the jokes? And also, make sure we get the cuteness of Baby Groot out there in full force. And then obviously the relationship between Star-Lord and his dad, and then Gamora and her sister, I know it was obviously something they wanted to get the familial theme in there and give you the essence of family, and realize that the real family within the actual structure of it was actually the Guardians of the Galaxy themselves, instead of the relationships that was being presented on screen. And that the theme was that, hey, actually, if the Guardians of the Galaxy are staying together, that's the real sense of family. I get that, but to me, it didn't connect, probably because, like I said, there were a lot of time it seemed devoted on trying to make sure that they connect with the joke, and that you made sure that you were trying to laugh before you tried to get anything going with the plot.
Right. And there's, obviously with StarLord, everyone's expecting jokes, but it would have been nice to get a little depth to his character. I know, like, it was a really sad moment when Ego talked about how he gave Star-Lord's mom cancer, but there was, it seems like there's a lot of opportunities to emotionally connect to these characters, and they just were like, "Oh, people don't want drama in here." That's the thing, though, with Marvel. They're so obsessed with the jokes and the comedy and like the stuff like that that they're missing a lot of really great storytelling opportunities. And granted, they do it okay in Captain America, Iron Man, stuff like that, but it's just like even in Thor Ragnarok, there was some moments like where Odin dies, and they could have kind of like explored Thor and Loki's grief about that, but then they just went immediately into joke telling, and it's just I see why they do it, and I understand why they do it, but I wish that they wouldn't.
Well, again, we'll talk about that when it comes to Thor Ragnarok here next week on next week's show, but on next week's PCC Multiverse. But again, going back to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, I had such high hopes for it. I was so excited for it, and the payoff for me wasn't that good at all. And there's obviously it did well enough that it's going to garner a Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Who's going to be there for it? We're not quite sure because Infinity War 1 and next year's culmination of what will happen in Infinity War with Infinity War Part 2 or whatever it's going to be called is going to be, well, it's going to tell us who's going to be in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So definitely interested to see that part of it. But I am going to give Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 a chance when it comes out to regain the mojo that it had with that excellent first film. What are your thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Did you think it enhanced the Marvel Cinematic Universe in the way that it was meant to, or do you think like us that it just wasn't something that kept its interest with us, too jokey, and didn't quite live up to its predecessor? Share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos at yahoo.com. Also as well, popculturecosmos, Humanic Media, and Game Source on Facebook and Twitter as well. So, Josh, it's been another great episode. Want to make sure and let everybody know next week on the Pop Culture Cosmos show coming in on Monday, we're going to be talking about obviously what happened with the aftermath of this weekend's box office. We're going to be talking a lot about God of War on PS4. Also, we're going to be talking about Anthony Barberin will be back with the postseason awards for the NBA. And definitely there's going to be a lot more to talk about as well. But any last thoughts on the way out, my friend?
No, I think that's good, man. Yeah, just check out all the great content we got coming out. And also, like, if you could please download our podcast. Like, even if you listen to it in the car, if you download it, that would be a huge help to us, just so we can kind of keep track of how many people are listening, and that helps us determine, whether or not we're growing. So we'd appreciate it.
Or if you're, or subscribe to our channels, the Pop Culture Cosmos channel, Super BS Gamescast, Topicocalypse, What About This, anywhere you see it. If you really like our shows and you want to download, make sure you download it to get all that extra content. Just go ahead and subscribe to any one of those channels at any opportunity on Apple Podcasts or on one of our over 30 different podcast networks. So for Josh Peterson, this is Gerald Glassford. It's another beautiful day in paradise here in the PCC Multiverse. We thank you for listening. And here's hoping you have yourself a great day.